Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the basement. I hope everyone is feeling tippity top. I wouldn't say I'm tippity top, but I'm grand. I'm grand, happy to be here waffling away to you guys and sharing music that I discovered this week, hoping that you guys will be into it in some form. We have lots of the same, but lots of different stuff for you tonight. We'll be hearing from Sleaford Mods, we'll be hearing from Bill Withers, Dr. John LaForce, Marianne Faithfull. We'll visit Yorkshire Man in his house. We might hear some John Coltrane. And I didn't think that we could achieve this level of consistency. It's not quite 100% consistency, but it's a pretty high hit rate for a show with such low production values. But yet again, this week we have an exclusive. Exclusive. One of my favorite artists and a great dear friend to the show, Kay Tempest, is going to be reading one of their poems on the show for us tonight. And believe me, this is worth sticking around for. It's a thing of beauty. So that's coming up before too long. To start, we had some exquisitely kind of deconstructed, I guess, contemporary classical music from a group called DR Radio. That was a tune called Fading Stars 2 from the album called Parts, and that came out on Distraction Records in 2010. That whole album is really something. And then you had music from Stereolab with a track called Come and Play in the Milky Night, which was the closing track on Cobra and Phase's group play Voltage in the Milky Night, which came out in 1999. It was good driving music, I think. I have that on a driving playlist. And sometimes I'm conscious of how many of you are listening to this either sitting in cars that aren't moving or sitting in cars that are moving. And I'm conscious of the experience of that and what it does to listening to music. I suppose it kind of puts a filter on it. You know, when you're moving, it sounds different to when you're not moving. What scintillating observations. Now I'm going to play you a few pop songs. I'm a big fan of excellently written pop songs, and the first piece you're going to hear is from I Am Clute, and this is brilliant. This is called Over My Shoulder. That was David Byrne there with the track called Glass, Concrete and Stone, which was the opening track on an album called Growing Backwards, which came out in 2004. So any of you who are Talking Heads fans will be aware that Stop Making Sense is 40 years old this year, and it's been re-released in cinemas, a beautiful new restored version. I think it's 4K or something like that. I haven't been to see it yet, but friends of mine that have say that it's just phenomenal. I mean, it is arguably one of the finest concert films ever made. Some people have mentioned to me over the years that from certain angles, myself and David Byrne, perhaps in our younger days, share some facial similarities. Is that weird? I mean, it's an observation that I take as a very high compliment. One of the most gifted, prolific artists of our time. Before David Byrne, you heard music from Miss Tiny, and that was a track called The Beggar. Now, Miss Tiny are producer guitarist Dan Carey, who is a fab producer, and he's produced lots of stuff that I've played here on this show. People like the Fontaines DC and Kay Tempest, who we'll be hearing from later on. And you have vocalist and drummer Benjamin Romans Hopcraft. Now we're going to go to France. This is an album that I've been listening to since 2005. It's by an artist called Camille, and this is a track called Ta Douleur. The thing that is interesting about this record is that every tune is in the same key, and there's this drone that runs through each track. I think it's a B tone, and every track runs above that B tone. You have to listen to the whole album to get it, but here's a sample. And that was the second piece of music from a French artist. That was a track called Hard Boiled Babe by Lizzie Mercier de clue? That's from a compilation celebrating 30 years of Z Records. Now from France, we're going to go to Jamaica. I'm going to play 2 tracks from a compilation that came out in 2020, which I love, and it's called When Jah Shall Come. And the first track is called Warzone, and this is from John Forbes. That was a track called Azabranca. It takes a very interesting turn, doesn't it? In the middle of that tune, there's a kind of this jazz funk middle 8 pops out of nowhere, and then it goes back into this beautiful traditional Spanish guitar piece. That came out in 1971, and the artist was Rosina de Valença. And the piece of music you heard before that was a Cajun track, which first came out in 1929, and it was by Amity Bro, Ophi Bro, and Clemo Bro. That was a track called Ma Blonde Partie, and that came out on the soundtrack for a documentary called American Epic, which was a series about the first recordings of roots music in the States during the 20s and their cultural and social and technological impact on North America and on the world. It's a very atmospheric piece. I hope you liked it. Now let's have Ask a Reasonable Question.
Ask a reasonable question.
So this week I'm going to break the rules, because this week we had a question which I have to say isn't reasonable. It's more like an unfeasible question. So the question from Maureen is, I'm wondering who Yorkshireman in his house is. Smiley face. Is it Professor Brian Cox by any chance? I recognise the voice from somewhere and it's driving me nuts. Laughing with crying tears face. I don't really expect you to spoil it for the listeners this early on though. Well, it's a strong guess. I mean, Professor Brian Cox, one of the great minds of our generation, a national broadcasting treasure, has a background in music himself. All around lovely, lovely gentleman. But honestly, on this type of a show, with this type of a budget, we couldn't afford Brian Cox. And I think he's actually from Manchester, isn't he? So our Yorkshireman will remain a mystery wrapped inside an anorak, wrapped inside an enigma. Now that we've started it, I think we might as well keep the guessing going. So if anyone has an idea who they think Yorkshireman in his house might be, just email me on cillian.murphy@bbc.co.uk. Mostly we're just after reasonable questions and also uninteresting facts. So here he is, whoever he might be. Yes, can't be anyone else. That was the Sleaford Mods with Big Pharma. They're touring, so go on sleafordmods.com and go and see him. Buy the vinyl, buy the t-shirt. Before that you heard Gang of Four with a track called Paralysed from 1981. And then before that you heard a very interesting track called Your Name is Snake Anthony by Medeski, Martin and Wood. And it came out on Blue Note in 2002. The guy doing the narration is a fella called Bruce Hampton. Excellent narration, kind of creepy in the best sense of the word. Now, oh yes, now it's time for our amazing exclusive. So this week we have an artist I have huge respect for. It's K Tempest. They're going to read from their book called Divisible by Itself and One, which is published by Picador. So take it away, Kay. Now, 2 smashing pieces there for you. First of all, thank you, Kay, for that beautiful poem. And after the poem, you heard Speaker's Corner Quartet featuring K Tempest from the album Further Out Than the Edge, which came out this year. And that went straight into La Force with Condition of Us. Love that track so much. That's from the album Exoskeleton, which is out now on Secret City Records. And now we're going to have music from Dr. John. This is a song that, for some reason, always gives me goosebumps. Did you know that the verb for getting goosebumps is to horripilate? For example, he heard the tune and he was swept by horripilation. It's a quite unpleasant sounding verb, isn't it? To horripilate. But it seems quite apt for certain occasions. Anyway, the tune that I horripilate to is a tune called I Walk on Gilded Splinters. And before the track, you're going to hear some amazing archive of Dr. John, just talking about how he started out in the business. Here it is. Just brilliant. That was Dr. John, I Walk on Gilded Splinters. Now, I'm going to follow that up with some classic Bill Withers. Doesn't really need any intro. This is Kissing My Love. That was the Cannonball Adderley Quintet with a track called Inside Straight. This is a live record, as you can tell. So Cannonball Adderley, he also played with Miles Davis alongside Coltrane from 57 to 59. Fab sound. It was produced by David Axelrod. If you know who David Axelrod is, you can tell it's got that big kind of pugilistic kind of sound. Now, next we're going to have some music from 1978. This is from an artist called Chris Spedding, and it's a track called Video Life. Interesting artist, Chris Spedding, put out an immense amount of music over his lifetime, as well as his solo stuff. He played with people like John Cale. He played with Tom Waits on Rain Dogs, which I've been playing a lot on the radio lately. He played with Harry Nilsson. He played with Paul McCartney. And best of all, he played with the Wombles. And he produced the very first Sex Pistols recording in 1976. But here he is with his own material, and this is a track called Video Life. I've been playing a lot of great pop tunes on this show for some reason. I've always been a sucker for hooks and melodies and compact pop songs. And we're going to have another one of those next. It's from an artist called Emmett Rhodes, with a track called Somebody Made For Me. This came out in 1970 originally on a self-titled album. There was a documentary made about him in 2009, and they call him the one-man Beatles because he has a very kind of McCartney-esque sound, which is a compliment but maybe also a bit of a burden. Anyway, this is a fantastic pop song. Do you see the way in so many avenues of music they lead back to the Beatles? Or maybe that's just in my mind, that's the way it's wired. But that was a cover version by Odetta of a Paul McCartney song called Every Night. That came out on McCartney's first album called McCartney. So inevitably that brings us back to Macca himself. And this is a track by Wings called Single Pigeon, which came out in 1973. It's a gorgeous track. I remember reading somewhere that this is one of Aldous Harding's favourite tracks of all time. It doesn't outstay its welcome either. That's another key to great pop tunes, I think. Let's have another brilliantly written pop song, and this is Fiona Apple with I Want You to Love Me. Finally got some Byron on the radio. That was Marianne Faithfull and Warren Ellis. That was She Walks in Beauty, which is Marianne Faithfull reciting us some Byron. On the album she also gives us pieces by Shelley and Keats and Wordsworth. It's worth checking out. The album is also called She Walks in Beauty. That came out in 2021. And before Marianne Faithfull, you heard a track by Lael Neal called Must Be Tears from her album Star Eater's Delight. I've played a few of her tracks on the radio. Love that album. Right, I'm going to leave you now. I'm going to leave you with 3 pieces of music. 2 more cover versions, interestingly enough. But first of all, I'm going to play a track called Wonderful World by 9 Horses. It's actually David Sylvian is 9 Horses. My friend Raymond Bell has been gently banging on to me about the brilliance of David Sylvian for many years now, and I just didn't have the time to spend the time, if you know what I mean. But Raymond, I'll say it on the airwaves, you were right, pal. And interestingly enough, Raymond is the same fella who taught me the word horripilation. So he's a man of many talents. Anyway, that track from Cillian is called Wonderful World, and then that's going to go straight into a brilliant cover version of Radiohead's All I Need by the Julia Hulsmann Trio, which came out on ECM in 2017. And then finally, you're going to hear some John Coltrane doing a cover of Nature Boy. I've played different versions of Nature Boy on this program at different points over the years, and this is a new interpretation from Coltrane. It only came out in 2018. It was called the Lost Album, so it's a relatively new piece from Coltrane. Anyway, that's my lot. Thanks very much for listening. Thank you to my producer Angela Davis for getting me through this week. Hope to see you next week. Take care. Mind yourselves now.